Goldman Prize for Environment recognises people who've contributed through sustained and significant efforts to protect and enhance the natural environment, often at great personal risk. Founded in 1989 by American philanthropist couple Richard and Rhoda Goldman, previous Goldman Prize winners like Wangari Maathai have gone on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Speaking to us today from South Africa is Desmond D'Sa, who's won this year's Goldman Prize for his work in shutting down one of the most toxic waste sites in Africa. Before we speak to him, though, let's hear a little more of his story.
Durban is known as a vacation destination with luxury resorts dotting miles of sumptuous beaches. But to the residents of South Durban, it's an entirely different reality. The poor neighborhoods there are surrounded by chemical plants and oil refineries that are known as Cancer Valley. More than half the population suffers from asthma. Desmond D'Sa spent half of his adult life working in a chemical factory here. When a massive oil refinery explosion traumatized his neighborhood, Desmond took a hard look at the specific causes of the many health and environmental issues that were crippling his community.
The causation of cancer and leukemia is directly linked to the high levels of benzene and sulfur dioxide. Imagine 60 tons of sulfur per day. All the waste was dumped here. Schools were affected, children were hospitalized. We looked through all that volumes of documentation to understand the chemicals and how they're dealing with it. The company Wasteman were adamant that they're not going to close the toxic landfill site. But we've shown that as a united force, we can stop environmental racism. And we've shown communities that there needs to be a new way of doing business.
For outstanding environmental achievement in Africa, the 2014 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Desmond D'Sa, Durban, South Africa.
Well, it's a pleasure to be joined by Desmond D'Sa now on the phone from Durban. Welcome to This Day Live and congratulations on the award. How has life changed for people in South Durban since your campaign?
Well, since the campaign, we have got some of the major industries to reduce some of the chemicals, such as sulfur dioxide has been reduced by over 60%. Initially, when the industry wasn't under pressure from the communities in South Durban, they were emitting huge amounts of toxic and chemicals and sulfur as well. Sulfur, we were looking at something like about 12,000 tons of sulfur a year just from one of the oil refineries. So we've got two of the biggest oil refineries, and we have two of the biggest paper mills amongst 300 other toxic chemical industries in South Durban.
You've called the problem, like the one you faced, environmental racism. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, inadvertently, these toxic dump sites are placed in poor black neighborhoods and have been pretty poorly managed over the years. And it's poor people ultimately who feel the effects of these toxic dump sites, who suffer from the high levels of cancer, leukemia and asthma. But more importantly, these are the people who are not even employed by the very same industries that dump all these toxics in their neighborhoods.
Well, indeed, and as we saw in that film, you did work in one of those factories. This week, President Obama unveiled a historic plan to reduce coal pollution by 30% in America, despite coming under fire from US coal lobbyists. Is the South African government, do you think, doing enough to reduce environmental damage?
Well, let me just say we welcome the move by President Obama to reduce the emissions in the US and to move away from coal-fired power stations. I think that's a significant move, and that the U.S. has taken the lead shows once again that the emissions, if the political will is there, these things can be done. But I think in South Africa we have a huge problem in the sense that currently we're building the third and fourth biggest coal-fired power station in the world, Medupi and Kusile, and the World Bank, despite all the rhetoric of moving away from coal, has granted those loans, and despite the warnings from civil society in South Africa and all over the world, that granting the loan to the government in South Africa to build the third and fourth biggest coal-fired power station.
Now, you're a great believer in the power of communities, aren't you? What's your next project?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we faced post-1994 will be the biggest social upheaval ever seen post-1994 that occurred during the apartheid era. This will be the development of the port, the Dugout Port in Durban, where thousands of people, predominantly poor black people, will be affected once again. Many of those poor black people have been were forced into the area during the Separation Act, during the apartheid era of 1966. And once again, if the port development goes ahead and if international banks and international lending agencies grant the loans to the government's, the country's parastatal Transnet, this will result in the evictions and removals and destruction of stable communities in South Africa and in Durban in particular.
Desmond D'Sa, good luck with that. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Arise News. That was Desmond D'Sa joining us from Durban in South Africa, the Goldman Prize winner for the environment.